The following is intended only for mature audiences. Always consult legal and medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised. Anytime that you go to a reader, or you're in a metaphysical conference, or you're going to a metaphysical consultation, there are times that you may very well hear the term twin flame or soulmate. And there seems to be some misconception about it, or people might wonder what it is that we're really kind of talking about. So tonight I thought we're going to have the male-female kind of show because we're looking at a very different topic from each a female viewpoint or a male viewpoint this evening. So we've got KB Hurst. Kelly, how you doing this evening?
Very good. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. This is going to be a lot of fun. And you've got myself, Michael. This, again, this is one of those topics that would really make you wonder if you had ever gone to, if you've never heard, and you went to a reader and they started talking about a twin flame or a soulmate. Some people might think one thing, or they might scratch their head, or they might be sitting there going, I really don't know what you're talking about. Now, you had mentioned earlier, you and I talked a little bit before the show, but when you think or when you talk to people about the term twin flame, in your way of working with it, how do you express that to people, or what do you tell people?
The way I've always looked at it was that your twin flame is in the beginning, you have a soul, there's one soul, and it is basically two parts,
Mm-hmm.
where your soul splits off, and then you have someone else that has the other part of that soul living in their body. You could be gay or straight, doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with that at all. It's just two individuals that basically share the same soul, and they come into this world to learn their lessons. You believe in a soul contract ahead of where agree to something ahead of time, which lessons you're going to learn when you come, when you're born onto this planet or into this universe, wherever you might be. That's how I've always understood your twin soul, which is completely different from a soulmate in that respect. I think that people look at the soulmate in the pretense of what I'm seeing as a twin flame. So the twin flame is the other part of that person's soul, kind of like the yin to the yang almost, but you're there on this planet to teach each other some form of lesson. It's not always romantic. It could be like one of your biggest enemies at work that you don't like, and they're here to teach you something. It could be a man, it could be a woman. But there's always something about that person that teaches you something. So.
Now, when you talk about that to people and you tell them that it's not always a romantic kind of thing, how do they react? Mm-hmm. I mean, did they come across with oh my God, or
confused? Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? And they don't like that. It's hard to grasp that concept because, we're inundated with soulmate nonstop, help. You see these advertisements for psychic readers. Let us help you find your soulmate, and with this beautiful background like yours tonight, Michael.
Yeah. Those are the ones that really tick me off.
And it's not, the soul is a journey, everyone has their own journey. And it's, I do believe in having a soul contract. I do believe personally that the things in this manifestation of our lives is what helps us learn to better ourselves, whether it be spiritually or just here on earth. If someone doesn't believe in afterlife or any of that, that's fine. But I still think that we're here for a purpose. And I think that and that's, the twin flame, I believe, is the other part of ourselves, whether we like it, whether we love it. But I feel it's almost like the ultimate master teacher, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. And I love that point of view because from my side, and just really quick, wanted to stop and say hey to a couple of people in the chat room. Kathy and Connie, Chris is in here this evening. Thanks, guys, for dropping in. I really appreciate it. But from my point of view, the guy's side, if I can say that, and again, this is going to be like a yin-yang kind of show, because every reader doesn't say the same thing. We don't all talk the same way.
No.
And because I'm a guy and I'm more analytical, I look at these things like you. The basic construct for me is, yes, when you started out, you may have your soul split. Now, from my end, people say, what do you mean? Well, look, you personally, and we could get into a whole other show about contracts, soul contracts, but you made the decision that you wanted your soul to be split in two or have a mirrored reflection of it. That's the basic for me. But when I work with people and I talk with them, they say, well, I've met several twin flames. And yes, you may have. To a point, because that other person is resonating on a very similar frequency to you. Their vibration is very similar to what you do. They think the same, they walk the same, they talk the same. Oh my God, we chew gum the same. Well, yeah, that's kind of a mirror reflection of who you are.
Right.
So when people say it's a twin flame, sure. And like you, I'll turn around and tell them, look, it doesn't mean romantic interest. It doesn't always mean this is somebody that is going to be fantastic in a relationship, in a romantic relationship.
Right.
But I do tell them, I say, look, do you want to have somebody to talk with, argue with, learn from, do things? Yeah, find a person that is very similar to you, because they're going to give you opposing views. Do you run into that a lot? And again, when you try to explain to people the twin flame aspect is learning together, and people balk at that, does it happen like very often with you?
I think that most of the time if I'm doing a reading or if I'm just having a chat with a friend, I think there's a little bit of a disappointment, because I think that most people, and I'm not saying you might come across this, but most people that I've read for, they're looking for some kind of relationship advice. That's most of the time why people get into the occult type things. That's why I started using spirit board. There's all these things in your mind. So I think there's a little bit of a disappointment when they realize, okay, this isn't what I thought it was. I'm looking for love and, great relationship, something more fulfilling on that romantic level. But it's not always like that. And I think once they kind of sit still and they listen to what I have to say, then they're a little bit more open-minded about it. But it does take a little bit of, wait, what? What are you talking about? And then they kind of relax. Once you explain to them that, it's just it's a process, and just being able to register what it is that means for them, and everyone, that's going to mean something different for everyone. If I have someone that I believe is a twin flame, to me, it resonates more like on a teaching level. But to someone else, they might look at that and say, oh, I was married to my twin flame for 30 years. And if it's a teacher, he wasn't a very nice guy, but he sure did teach me what I don't want in life. It's like kind of like it's usually a romantic thing that they think of, and just trying to get them out of thinking romantically. It takes a minute for sure, because that's what everybody is looking for. And I think 90% of that is, ooh, tell me who I'm going to marry.
Yeah. And now, Kelly has worked with a lot of people in a different fashion from what I do. She'll work with them with spirit boards. She'll work with them through readings, so she's on one part of the yardstick. I'm on a different. For me, I work with a major online company. By contract, I'm not allowed to say who. But more than 12 years worth, and actually more than 13. And I'll tell people right now, I've done more than 30,000 readings with this company, with people in 19 different countries around the world. And I get a lot of calls that are asking about these two subjects. And they talk about twin flame, and you mentioned it's like you see these commercials, like Miss Cleo. I'll use that as a prime example because everybody knows it.
Classic.
And they say twin flame and they think one thing, and then we come across like people like you and I, and we explain
Mhm.
what we have found to be true. Some people get it. Some people get upset,
Mhm.
because you're wrecking their ideal of a meaning. But interesting in the chat, Chris says, as a Pisces, I understand and agree to an extent. It's like our souls are fractured, and there are pieces of us that complete us or help make us
Mhm.
whole. And I would agree with that. Now,
Right.
interesting, you mentioned earlier that a twin flame is often a teaching aspect.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about your kind of thinking for that.
Well, I think that, we want something more out of this life. And because I do believe that, in a sense, you have kind of an agreement before you land in this insanity that I call planet Earth. I do feel that, to reach a higher enlightenment, that we are trying to achieve that. So in order to achieve that, okay, what did I believe in? I believe in multiple lives. I believe in reincarnation. I do. And I think that in order to get to a higher plane or a better means of existence, you do have to go through certain lessons. It's like a child, as a human being, we're often presented with things and it's like, okay, how are you going to handle this? And if you look at it from that perspective, maybe this person was kind of a bad person in past life. So in this life, he's the person that was treated poorly. What is the lesson there? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And that's why I look at the twin flame as a lesson for that. I was looking at some stuff online tonight, and one of the things that I was reading about, which I thought was interesting, I was trying to refresh some of the stuff that I had learned previously so I'd have something good to talk about. And one thing that I thought was very interesting was they talk about abusive relationships. And I look at a twin flame, as unfortunate as it is, could potentially be someone that maybe isn't very good to you. And because that person is not very good to you, you have to kind of take a moment to say, okay, I'm not going to put up with this. I deserve better. And therefore you become a person of higher learning, like through like in your soul, through not accepting that, because none of us deserve that. It takes a lot of courage to say no to a situation like that. So
Mm-hmm.
your twin flame could very well be something that's irritable, something that you are not expecting to be that way. And on the other end of it, you could meet your twin flame and it's amazing. You're like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest sex I've ever had. This is the best relationship. But then it can fizzle out very quickly because you're really here because it's almost like looking in a mirror. It's almost like falling in love with yourself. And we all get really we might love ourselves, but we're going to be real irritated with ourselves also. And it's I look at that from that perspective of saying, okay, so you're teaching that person something. It's not always going to be roses and long walks in the park. There's going to be something chaotic about it. You're almost welcoming the chaos so that you can learn from it. So to me, a twin flame is a learning experience. You're welcoming it's kind of like the tower card. We talked about tarot cards last week. If anyone didn't catch the show, they should go back and watch it. But, you have that breakdown of, if you don't have the breakdown of a situation, you cannot learn from it. And that's how I look at the twin flame.
It mirrors a lot, again, ironically.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that I talk with people and I tell them, you've got a twin flame that you run into, and you'll run into multiple of them in your
Right.
life, depending upon a situation. If you're having a rough time, you know, a twin flame might come in and you learn more from them, or they help you, or they buoy you, keep you above,
Mm-hmm.
waterline so you're not drowning in your life. And
Right.
I tell people when that happens, when these people come in and they resonate with you so well,
Mm-hmm.
like you, I tell them don't expect them to hang around forever.
Right.
And they say, well, why not? Well, imagine going on a car ride from the East Coast to California with a person who is exactly like you. For the first day, it's awesome. For the second day, it starts to grate on your nerves. By the time you get to California, you want to kick them out of the damn car. You know?
Exactly.
So these people are there to help you, and they are awesome and fantastic while they're
Hmm.
there, but they're not a permanent thing.
Hmm.
Now, let's move over to soul mates. And I'm going to start with you because I really want to hear more of how you think about it, both as a reader, but as also as a female.
As
So,
a female, obviously I'm a hopeless romantic. I'm going to look at this and go, oh, well, we all want our soulmates. But I also look at it as it should be easy. With twin flames, like I said, it's chaotic. With a soulmate, it's going to be like cuddling with your favorite blanket. I'm a believer that you have multiple soulmates and one twin flame. But I feel like with multiple soulmates, that can come in as an animal, a pet, and it's not always romantic. Soulmates aren't necessarily romantic, but they're there in some respect. Um, it's less teaching, but more acceptance of yourself. In order to find your soulmate, I believe that you have to eventually accept who you are as yourself in order to welcome that kind of energy into your life. If you're a very negative person, you're never going to find your soulmate. You might have a ton, like in your sense, like you're looking at twin flames as multiple. That person might have multiple twin flames that are jerks, but maybe they never really learned from that experience, so they keep getting those things in their life.
mm-hmm,
But a soulmate, I feel, is something that should be a little more easy. I'm not saying that you won't have arguments with a soulmate, or have days where you're just like, oh, this person's driving me crazy, or that this happened, and but at the same time you can always work through it. It should be easier than the other. That's how I see it, as something that's more deserved at the end of a really bad storm, like the calm. You might have some really rough experiences, but when you have a soulmate in your life, that's when you can kind of go, take a deep breath and relax. And it should be a period of I'm not saying that you're always going to stay with your soulmate either. Unfortunately, things happen, people pass away. But
mm-hmm.
I think that, being able to be in with that person, I think is part of your healing. And it's almost like I see it like a reward for working so hard. Excuse me.
Now, this again is me as a guy, and I have a very different outlook, if I can even put it that way. Because when I look at a soulmate, and because I, like you,
Mm-hmm.
very much understand past life and yet future lives, we can only live in the present, but we have past
Mm-hmm.
lives that influence us directly.
Mm-hmm.
And just on a side note of that, two things. I see Malcolm is in our chat room this evening. How you doing,
Hi,
Malcolm?
Malcolm.
Yeah. But it's the second part of that is past lives are not linear. I don't know how many people might think about that. Past lives just mean a life that is pre this life,
Mm-hmm.
not linear in time frame. You might live a life before this might have come from 2085, and the one that from before that might have come from 1810, and the one before that might have come from, I don't know, 1000 BC or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're not linear, but they're there to help teach us different aspects to move us to where we are now. So, when I talk about a soulmate, we only have a single soul. We can divide it into pieces, but there's still just us, one.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, from my viewpoint, and I look at things, a soulmate is a mate of your soul and their soul. And I say this because if you look around in nature, there are many animals that will mate for life.
Mm-hmm.
Bald eagles, or
Right.
a huge one. They take a mate and that's it. If one of them dies, the other one goes on, and they never get together with anybody else. And I look at that in the same way, saying we have a soulmate. We have just one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not guaranteed that we're going to find that soulmate as a romantic relationship in this lifetime. There's no guarantee of that.
Right.
And what you said earlier starts to really help bolster my understanding of that. You say a soulmate
Mm-hmm.
might come in as a pet, as
Mm-hmm.
something that is other than a human being.
Right.
And we form a very great attachment
Right.
without really understanding why. You know, we have many pets in our lives, but there seems to be that one that you just bonded with. That could be your soulmate.
Right.
The other side of that, for me, when I look at it, there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. Okay, and and I'll put it this way, and this may sound kind of arrogant, but it's arrogant to think that your soulmate is going to be born anywhere near the time that you are, or within a certain radius, or of the same nationality.
Mm-hmm.
You could be born here in America, and your soulmate in this lifetime is born in China. What are the odds that you're truly going to find each
Right.
other? Slim.
Right.
Because of the internet, it is becoming much easier to find each other,
Right.
but the odds are actually very slim because you might have been born. I'm 51. I'm not even going to touch the subject of your age. You're much younger than I am. It's not polite, but I'm 51. My soulmate might have, in this lifetime, been born 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be old and dead and gone before they're even aware that I'm
Mm-hmm.
around, let alone being emotionally aware that compatibility. I don't know how that sounds on your end.
To me, if that happens, it doesn't mean that in some incarnation that you won't eventually meet. You're just living your current state of being, your current life. So, someone's 3 years old and you're like 99. Okay, well, you didn't meet this one. They're learning their own lessons separately. And so you might not have met that person in this incarnation, but you didn't know that they even existed in this incarnation if you never knew that they existed at the same time that you were alive. So perhaps in some respect, at some point, you may encounter them in that sense. So, I mean, they could have been your cat
Yeah.
and then, they died and then they were reborn like in the same lifetime as you, but you may not have known it. But I do believe you have certain interactions with them. It could be perfect example. I was once reading something. I can't remember if it was an article, if it was just something that I read on the internet, but it was a woman who had um, she was talking about that very thing, and there was a gentleman that just out of nowhere, she was having a really bad day, paid her a very polite compliment, and it was the first time anyone ever in her entire life ever gave her a nice compliment. End of the day, he disappears. That could have very well been her soulmate, and it gave her a different perspective on her life and made her think that not everyone's a bad person because she'd had a lot of abuse and a lot of terrible things. It was the one and only time in her entire life someone ever said something to her that was, hey, you look kind of sad today. Hey, you got a great shirt on, or your hair looks nice. I can't remember what the compliment was, but it was something so short and so brief. And here it changed her entire life. She went on to not be so depressed. And some people might say, hey, that could be an angel, hey, whatever, that could also be your soulmate. And in her mind, she was like, whoever this person was, they did this thing for me, and it really changed my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a soulmate, one and only time. But that could have been that. I look at that way. There's always going to be some kind of weird encounter. You may only encounter them once. It could be a nice comment on a YouTube video you pop up, or someone you're having it, like with her, she was having basically a bad life for 25 years. I think she was like probably in her mid 20s or early 30s, and it was the first time anyone had ever really been polite to her. And he disappeared. She never saw him again. She doesn't even know his name. But I thought it was interesting because that one and only encounter that person had could have very well been a soulmate. And they served their purpose, and they had that moment of having a conversation, and then poof, he's gone.
See, now it's interesting that you say that.
Mhm.
First, Rose came in and joined in the chat. Rose, it's good to see you this evening. Also, Louie, and Louie made a comment, but before that, Chris had asked, he goes, do you think soulmates can ever be platonic, as in friends
Mhm.
without crossing into romance?
Yes, I do.
And that's very much what I would agree and say
Mhm.
yes, because that person, and ironically, right behind that, Louis had turned around and said, it's always been my understanding that soulmates incarnate with us to help us learn. And
Mhm.
sometimes that lesson comes as an enemy or other family members, and seldom are they a lover.
See,
So
that's
it,
how I view the twin flame more so than the soulmate.
mhm.
I see them more, like I said before, more of a teacher um, aspect of that.
See, and this is why I wanted to have a conversation about these two topics,
Hmm.
because everybody has a slightly different variation of what they might say, perceive, or understand as
Hmm.
either a twin flame or as a soulmate. But I keep hearing the same things, that they are resoundingly close
Hmm.
in nature. You know, and for the people that are readers or working in the metaphysical field, it of course comes down to preference. I have to put it that way. You know, because
Hmm.
I'm a logical guy, and face it, guys, come on. We can do one thing well at any given time. Men do not multitask well. Ask us to do that, we're in a lot of trouble.
No
And
comment.
yeah, it's true. Come on. You know it, I know it. But the thing being is that men are the I have a problem, I have a resolution or a way to fix it. I have
Hmm.
accomplished that. Let's go on to the next thing. So we're extremely cut and dry in a lot of the way that we look at things, to
Hmm.
whereas the female side is the nurturing side, is the side that helps us grow. You know, the
Hmm.
married men, you know, the female aspect in life helps keep them in check. Oh, come on. You've met Shelley. If I didn't have her
Yes,
around, I would be in so much trouble. It's
you
not even
would.
funny.
Your desk would have way more stuff on it.
She is definitely my soulmate. There is no doubt about it.
I also see it karma too. People look at relationships in a karma sense, like a past life. But Pat, who's on here frequently, always says, "Oh, this is a karmic thing." She always tells me when there's someone in my life that's either irritating me or not, if I'm having a bad day, she's like, "Oh, it's karmic. It's karmic." And
Hmm.
I do see it that way. I do see it, and maybe not in that moment, I'm too mad or something, but I do see where she's coming from with that. So.
Oh, very much so. Laura says hi from Maui. Laura, it's nice to see you this evening. No doubt about that. It's got to be some great weather out there.
No kidding.
This evening, here again, we're talking about twin flames and soulmates. And Kelly and I are, again, adding a male and female perspective to things that we all talk about from time to time in the metaphysical world. But we're going to be right back, and we're going to tie into more of the everyday life and how these things really hit home, and it might resound a little bit better with you. But we'll be right back after this quick break. Coming back from our break this evening, we're talking about twin flames and soulmates. And those are topics that I know that there are times that it is difficult to have that conversation with some people because they have a very extremely set mindset about it. So it becomes difficult. Hello, Lynn. I see you there in the chat room. But it becomes difficult in order for us to, as readers, trying to express what we're seeing, what we're feeling, the information that we have to get across to people. And then inadvertently the client will ask, is this a twin flame? Is this my soulmate? Or where will I find my soulmate? And those are the things that are really difficult to answer because they might already be in your life and you might have already set them aside, going, I don't want that. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, twin flames are teachers. They help people. Now, in everyday life, and I enjoy the fact that you had mentioned pets, but you and I had spoken previously, and you mentioned about twin flames might actually even be in your own family. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned another something, earth something.
I always have this thing where I was talking about mates in general. You can have what it's my own word, but I call them earth mates. You might have, it's beyond soulmate, it's beyond twin flames. It's your compatibility person. It's not necessarily a soulmate, but there's a lot of places in the world they still have arranged marriages, and a lot of times those arranged marriages work out very well because it's two individuals that come together, whether it be financial, whether it be the family just says, hey, you guys are going to be together, and it works out very nicely. It's almost like having a cubicle mate, mm-hmm. but they're married. So I jokingly call it a earth mate. So you might have an earth mate instead of a soulmate, where you both came here different reasons and you are just placed together for whatever reason and it works. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of people that even still to this day are part of an arranged marriage and it works out very nicely. I think I read a study recently about more and more individuals wish that they could be part of an arranged marriage because they're having such a hard time finding someone to date in the modern era. And I'm fascinated by that, because everyone, they're on Tinder, they're on the internet and everything's very fast paced, but there's no quality to the relationship. It's more quantity. And so that's another thing, you go into soulmate territory, when someone has more of a quantity of potential mates or lovers, it's very hard to allow yourself to find the one because your frequency lowers by the more encounters that you have, which is a completely different type of subject. But I firmly believe that, when you are maybe being more promiscuous even, that kind of lowers your frequency and you're not open to it, because I think in a sense you have to kind of love yourself enough to be open to finding your soulmate too, which again, if it's looking at it from that perspective of, male, female, male, male, or female, female relationships, mm-hmm. You're having that understanding it's more of a romantic alignment, then you want to actually put out that vibe that, you're open, that you love yourself, and that person is going to be attracted to loving you in the same way that you care about yourself. If it's just in the sense that, like we were talking about, in a sense, your best friend even, it's more platonic, but your best friend can be your soulmate. You can have, a sister that's more like your soulmate. I've known people for years that are their sisters, or like my brother and I were best friends. I call him my troublemaker half, but yin to my yang. But, it's the same kind of a thing. You're very close to someone, they get you. It's like you pick something up and, you drop something, they pick it up. It works together. But there's different levels of it, I think. And maybe we're just putting labels on things too. It could just be human nature to put labels on something that's deep and meaningful, but that's how we identify. So
when you are working with people and you can, as a reader, you can see, we'll start, and you see a twin flame kind of energetic coming into that mm-hmm. person's life.
Right.
How would you advise them uh, to be open, to pay attention, is there, from your aspect, is there a feeling, a trigger point, a something to let that person know this portion of significance is either getting ready to enter my life or just plop and there it is?
Depending on the style of reading, from talking to someone, I've given readings over the years where, if I'm using the tarot card spread and I see certain cards that might align to a more controlling personality that seems to encompass that entire person's life where they can't think for themselves anymore. To me, that energy can be more twin flame because it comes in like a storm, like I said earlier, chaos. That's how I see it. A twin flame is it's coming in almost like a car accident. You can't look away.
Mm-hmm.
Where a soulmate energy, maybe this person was just divorced and they're moving on and they have this friend that's always there for them. And maybe they, what people call now friend zone this person for years. And then all of a sudden, eventually, they come together and they have a relationship. And that to me would be more of a soulmate connection than a twin flame connection.
I've run
Um,
into that a lot. I want to say in the last 5 years, it has become either it has become more prevalent or it has become something that people talk about. They're like, okay, I'm in my 50s, somebody like me. And they remember somebody from high school, and they were really close friends in high school, and then they departed each other for like they haven't seen him in 25 years or 30 years. And all of a sudden they're coming back together. And it's like they're looking at this person in a brand new light, a different way
mhm,
altogether.
right.
It bypassed the confines of a friendship. And they're like, I really don't know what to do about this. And I'll tell them, hey, look, does it feel correct to you? Don't worry so much about the past. That's history, and it's something for you to think on. But does it
Hmm.
feel correct? Does it sit in your gut correctly? And then I'll ask them, does the other person have or match that same kind of feeling? Do they feel comfortable?
Hmm.
And quite often they will say, yeah, we had this conversation, both of us wanted to express, how we felt years ago, and we never did. And now here we are running into each other. We're both married, divorced, or married, widowed, or whatever, you know.
Right.
And here's this other person, and they're like, I wish I would have told you this years ago. I said, whoa, time out.
Hmm.
Don't don't be so harsh on yourself because those intervening years, one or both of you needed to expand, experience, do something, be somebody's dad or mom or help other ways so
Hmm.
that now you and this person that you knew years ago can become so much more compatible than you would have if you had gotten married or gotten together as high school
Hmm.
sweethearts. And they'll oftentimes they'll sit there and go, yeah, if we would have gotten together then, I said you'd probably be divorced by now. It
Right.
wasn't the right time.
I
You
would
know,
agree with that. I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's like, friendships, relationships. And, when I met my husband, he's a few years younger than I am. But when I met him, he was in a completely different place. But I think if it had been a couple years before I met him, I don't think we would have ever been together. So, there's that. You look at things from that perspective and it's like, oh, it completely makes sense. Or even just with friendships, teachers, there are some people I refer to as soul teachers. I have a few of those in my life. Pat is one of them. She's totally like my other mother, and she's on here quite frequently for those that may just be watching for the first time.
yeah.
But, I jokingly call her my fairy godmother. But it's the same thing. I don't think that it wouldn't be someone I would probably know had the metaphysical part not come into my life. It wouldn't resonate with me the same. And, the relationships that we have in our lives, whether it be a teacher, it could be a soul sister, it could be, soul friends. There's someone that feels very close to your heart in a soul manner. And I think that goes back to what a lot of people believe, that they have a soul family, and every one of us are somehow reincarnating together in this soul family. It could be, 50 of you, it could be 10 of you. And for people that don't know, you can always Google, soul family, that kind of thing. But it's interesting because then you can kind of see the relationships that you have with people and why those relationships might mean something, or why you're learning this lesson from this person, or why that darned person just is always there and you can't get rid of them. They're meant to
Right.
be there in some respect. So
I run into that very same thing in working with people.
mm-hmm.
And they'll say, you know, we were together, we broke apart, but I can't get rid of this feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll stop and tell them, look, let's talk about something here. Your intuitive gut feeling that you have is never wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We might not be able to understand all the nuances of what we're feeling. And the only time that we really, when our gut feeling, our intuitive side is wrong, is when we try to ad lib. Well, I think it said this, so maybe I need to do this and this and that. No, don't shoot yourself in the foot. If your gut feeling says do this, do that only.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go, oh, yeah, well, because of that, I can then do this and then I can do this, so that's what my gut feeling said. No, that's not what your gut feeling told you. But in the case of relationship, when people tell me we split apart and I can't get rid of this feeling,
Mm-hmm.
you're not supposed to. It's there for a reason. And people will say, well, things ended badly or poorly, or that's fine. Because let's help them. Look, you've dropped kicked people out of your life before for less.
Mm-hmm.
You've gotten rid of friends. You have stopped talking to family. You have dissected people out of your life for much less.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here's this
Right.
feeling that is saying, I'm still attached. I'm still in love. And I'll say, because they're going to be coming back around at some point to give you the capability to A, either try to reconnect, or B, to find a resolution and some closure. It's one of the two things.
Mm-hmm. And you can't force it either. You can't
No.
force those things. And you see a lot of people, oh, he's got to be my soulmate because we both like Dairy Queen, whatever it is. It's like they're looking so hard that they miss, the signs and that they're coming into their life. They're missing this other part of it that they're trying to force something that may not ever be there.
Right.
And some people just come into your life and like, where the heck did you come from? Like, why are you here? Like, I don't know why I'm friends with you, or
Yep.
how are you here? I have a few of those people in my life. I'm like, where did you come from? Did you just fall out of the sky? But that you can't force something like that. It's if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. They talk about soul contracts. If you sign that contract, you can try to say all day long, this is what I want. But if you try to force it in one way as opposed to the other, it's going to knock you down. It's going to knock you off your feet. You're going to be like, oh, this is not the right thing. You're going to keep having bad relationships. You're going to keep having, negative self-talk and have low self-esteem because of all these bad things that are coming into your life. Which I think in a sense is sometimes, if someone has a lot of those experiences, maybe their soulmate is their cat, because that's the one true person that's always comforting you, so maybe in this incarnation, maybe that's not your lesson to learn, is how to be romantic or be in that kind of relationship. Maybe it's something completely different and you're not accepting that because you're so hard pressed to find this perfect storybook relationship because you're watching too many, movies.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Here's a good question for you. Have you ever run across somebody that says, I think I found my soulmate, and they're drop dead serious, and or you can see as a reader, okay, this is a high likelihood that they have.
mm-hmm. Right.
Yet the person goes, I think I found my soulmate, but
Mm-hmm.
this person is so toxic that if I had a relationship with them, my life would turn to hell.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't, but yet they can't get rid of the loving feeling, that connection. So if you have somebody that comes and tells you something like this, what do you tell them? How might you advise them to do something or not to do something?
I think that if it's truly your soulmate, then it's going to take time. You're going to have a lot of patience. and you're going to have to put up with a lot of stuff. And eventually, it may not necessarily ever be a full on romantic relationship. You can care for them. Maybe the reason that, if you're caring for them, maybe in some respect you're helping them.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying like enabling someone, if they're on drugs or, that kind of toxic thing. But, you might be there just to be a ray of sunshine in that person's life because you do care about them. And it may not be about you at all. It might be about that other person. And that's what I would tell them. It might not be you, it might be them. You care about them, but maybe you're here to teach them something as opposed to vice versa. But we're so hard pressed to think, oh, this has to be it. But things also take time, they take patience. I've known people that I've done readings for that maybe their spouse was, toxic in the sense that they were an alcoholic or a drug addict. And if they're willing to try to stick it out and work together, and eventually maybe that person sobers up and they can kind of work in
I'm
that
much the same.
respect.
I'm much the same because I tell people, look, in any relationship, and especially when you're talking about a romantic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
we are happiest when we are giving and not receiving. And
Right.
people, that baffles some people. It's wholeheartedly true,
It's
you
the
know?
ego. It's that ego. It makes us feel good. It's why we give presents at Christmas time.
Yeah.
We like to see the enjoyment in someone else's face. And even if someone says, "Oh, I don't really care about that," everyone in some way, shape, or form, that's why you're feeding the ego.
And you sit there and we'll say, I love doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a prime example. Um, my relationship with my wife, I found very much. I patterned after my father without even really knowing it. So it was as I was being raised, and I tell people, look, I'm not your typical. I'm not normal. I never have been. I can't help it. But my relationship with my wife is the number one thing in my entire world. Comes first, hands down, every day. And even my children, they know, and I've told them repeatedly, I love you unequivocally, but you will always take one hair of a sliver less than your mom. And they and I have had some amazing conversations about that fact.
Mm-hmm.
I said, because at some point in time, you're going to find the same thing. You know,
Right.
it's just one of those things. But it's me. It's a peculiar. I'm not even gonna. I'm tongue tied at that. But for me, Shelley will tell me, that she enjoyed doing something. I'm like most guys, a kid in a candy store. You enjoyed that? Well, here, let me do it 500 more times. And the first 5 times, the ladies think, that's sweet, it's endearing. And the next 5 times, they're like, okay, I've had enough. And the 200 times after that, they're like, are you effing kidding me? Stop.
Think of something new.
See, but this is the problem. Most guys will sit there and go, oh, I thought you liked that. Well, Michael, it was cute for a while, or it was endearing, or it was nice. Now it's just, I've had enough.
Right.
Oh. And then we get dejected.
And a relationship is work, I mean, I think people think that the idea of a soulmate means you never have to work at your relationship. And no, absolutely not. Every relationship, you have to work at it. I mean, my husband and I, we bicker like cats and dogs, but at the end of the day, we love each other. We're not going anywhere,
Yep.
and it's like one of those things where I think that if you don't get things off your chest or like yell and scream in the other room, I think that you don't understand the feeling of the other person. You have to talk things out. Or if I'm really angry, I'll text him. I'll text him this big long paragraph and I'm like, oh my gosh, and vice versa, but at least you get it out and you understand it, because I'm too mad to talk to you. I'd rather read what you're saying to me as opposed to me talking to you. And it's the same thing. People imagine soulmates is this, oh, I never have to worry about working at my relationships ever again because everything's going to be perfect and sunshine and you're my magic rainbow man. No, it does not work like that at all. Every relationship, you're going to be annoyed by something. It's
Yeah,
just,
it's true.
some are easier than others. I mean, that's the purpose of it.
I,
But
I bring that up simply because it helps delineate for some people the difference between a twin flame
Hmm.
and a soulmate.
Right.
If you get this way to where you can't have these kinds of conversations, that somebody gets so irritated that they go off, that's more than
Hmm.
likely a twin flame because
Right.
their
They never
energy
come
is
back.
very similar. But a soulmate might become really upset, but they're going to come back and they're going to talk to you. Even if they're
Hmm.
arguing with you, they're trying to find some common ground somehow. That's a soulmate because
Right.
it is one of those things. If by choice that it is a mutual agreement to create a relationship out of it. Because
Hmm.
it's not just, oh my God, you're my soulmate, come here, I'm going to love you and hug you and keep you forever and I'm going to name you whatever. It doesn't work that way,
No.
men or ladies, because it might not be that right time. Do you run across that with people? That men, lady or men, that they become, I don't even know what the right wording would be, overbearing,
Hmm. Controlling.
expectation,
Yeah.
going, you're my soulmate, come here, sit down, I'm going to take care of you, this is it.
Hmm.
What do you mean you don't love me?
Right.
Time out, folks. You know, let's have a
No.
conversation before you go to see a
Right.
psychologist or.
I I've only come across that one time years ago with a friend who was very obsessed with an ex girlfriend, and it was really hard for that person to get over that relationship. And it wasn't just me. It basically was like all our friends collectively. It was like take a the whole village to try to help this person get over it. And like you were talking about male and females, I think men take longer to get over things because not all men like to talk about their feelings either.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like whatever women, we love to talk about our feelings. We shout it from the rooftops, we tweet it, we hashtag it, it's like we love to talk about stuff. Naturally chatty, most of us. But I feel like in that case, if someone's trying to really, again, with the forcing, you can't force it. And if someone's meant to be with you, they will be with you. If they have no desire, then maybe it's not for you. We talk about family and animals and those types of things. You can't force an animal to live with you either. You might have this cat, you're like, oh, it's my favorite animal, and you might sync very well, but then 2 weeks later, that cat's gone
Mm-hmm.
because that's what cats do. Some do, some don't. Some just lay on your sofa and never get up. Not mentioning names, but yeah. But I mean, I think that it's just kind of one of those things. You can't force it. You can't force it.
No.
You can't. And I think that's another thing. It's like learning how to accept what is and have patience. And everyone's always telling you gotta have patience. I'm learning patience, even at my age.
You're not that old. I'm at my age, my rear end. See, see, this is the problem. At times, there are things that I want to say, and if I were just to open my mouth and let it be unfiltered, I think we would all be in trouble.
I'm a bad influence.
All right, so let's wrap up and just recap real quick. We can see a difference between a twin flame and a soulmate, and even a soulmate can be platonic,
Mm-hmm.
can be educational, informational, does not always mean romantic or. This is an odd one. Did you ever run into somebody that they know that they have found their soulmate? Both of them recognize this,
Mm-hmm.
but they only keep it at a physical level and it never really turns, or they don't allow it to mature into a relationship, romantic level, or that it is something all physical, no real emotional, and somewhat cerebral.
I've seen it with people that have had affairs. You're married for so long, and then you meet this person. They are magically your soulmate, but you can't do anything beyond that because your people are married. And I've seen that, and that's a very negative type of situation. But I've seen that. I've encountered at least one person that I knew for a fact that was who had a conversation with me. This was years ago when I was doing a reading for them. That definitely had that, and it was like firecrackers. It wasn't like necessarily a lust thing. I mean, they cared about each other very much, but they both were in relationships for whether money or whatever reason they couldn't leave the relationship, so they had an affair.
Mm-hmm.
So in
And
that case, yes.
that's a difficult one. I run into that. There's the same thing very often.
Mm-hmm.
And people will possibly take a dalliance, or it may become a very unrequited kind of
Mm-hmm.
emotional feeling. Or
Right.
you said earlier, it just reminded me of the old song, the Pina Colada song.
Yes.
You know, there's giving a piece of age away, but it's true. We all find things at different various
Mhm.
points in our lives. It
Right.
becomes choice
Hmm.
of what you're going to do about it, whether it's a
And maybe,
twin flame or a soulmate.
and if someone is in a relationship, you might just turn into being really great soul friends, and that's it. Which is hopefully the choice someone would make in that situation. But
Hmm.
doesn't always happen that way.
No, and it's difficult. I know for myself, it is difficult. I'm not a judgmental person.
Hmm.
My own checkered colored past would say calling the kettle black, and I won't do that to other people.
Hmm.
I'm happily married, have been 20 years.
Hmm.
Fantastic kind of thing. And so I don't judge other people of what they're doing. As a reader, I'm only there to try to help them along.
Right.
And hopefully tonight we've been able to do that with twin flames and soulmates. And believe it or not, our hour is already gone.
It always does. It goes very quickly.
So this evening, you've been listening with Kelly and myself talking about twin flames and soulmates, and hopefully, it's been illuminating. Might be the right word. I don't want to say educational because we all have a different, various thought pattern about the subjects. We're just offering what ours are.
Hmm.
Just to let people know, we are going to be off for the next 2 weeks. Next week is Christmas, and the following week is New Year's Day. So look for us to return January 8th. January 8th will be the next Terra Turas show. Until then, thank you everybody for taking time to join. Thank you for taking time to listen. I hope that everybody has a great Christmas and a great New Year, safe
Yes.
and loving with family, friends, however you can manage to do it. But until next time, we will see you again 2 weeks from now. And everybody have a great night and a great weekend.
A good one.